The Home Office is in charge of law and order. Yvette Cooper is in charge of the Home Office. When the Home Office puts out a tweet like this, talking about criminals, when they're talking about people who have simply been accused of crime, you might say that the leader of the Home Office doesn't understand the way the law works, but only understands party discipline. I'm going to be talking about that. I'm Granniopteryx. I'm on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. So what happened was this. Lee Anderson, used to be a Conservative MP, is now a Reform Party MP, pointed out this tweet from the Home Office. It says here in the tweet, more than 1,000 arrests related to recent public disorder. I'm quite willing to believe that. And then behind the announcement about the 1,000 arrests, lots of pictures of people who have been arrested, I suppose. Blurred, so you can't see them too clearly. But the important point here is what Lee Anderson points out. There's a message at the head of this 1,000 arrests, accompanying this sort of poster that's been put up on X. These criminals will face the full force of the law. Now, it's this word here that's the important thing. Because nobody is a criminal unless convicted of a crime. Before that, they have to be presumed innocent under British law. But the Home Office put this out, which means that the Home Office doesn't understand how the law works. It's called the presumption of innocence. And this is from a human rights organisation, the Right to Fair Trial, campaigns, resources about us. They're throughout the Western world. They have offices in America, in Britain, I think in Australia, I don't remember. But anyway, it's pretty well international and probably a bloody nuisance to a lot of governmental offices. But they are here, you cannot, I don't know anything more about them other than this opening paragraph, which is absolutely 100% rock solid. A fundamental principle behind the right to a fair trial is that every person should be presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty. Many people who are accused of crimes will ultimately be found innocent. This is why any restriction on an accused person's rights, such as holding them in pre-trial detention, should only take place where absolutely necessary. But the important thing is that it's a fundamental principle of British law, at any rate, and Western law generally, I think, that anybody who is arrested should be presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty. So that is the basis upon which our entire society rests. And whether it works properly or not, that is the basis. When you walk into a courtroom, you are innocent. Yeah, you may get newspapers accusing you of this, that and the other. I'm talking about the technicalities here. So when the Home Office calls these people criminals, it means the Home Office has already made up its mind. Now, they say that the Home Office doesn't give instructions to judges, but I don't believe them. I believe even if judges don't get direct instructions, they get a feeling that this is what is required, and they are as human as anyone else for all their elaborate gowns and 18th century wigs. And Lee Anderson has pointed it out. These criminals will face the full force of the law, he says. And his post says, you're assuming they're all guilty, all 1,000 of them, before a trial. And then he asks, is this contempt of court from the Home Office? Because you are not supposed to, poison the well. Now, I'm not sure, but I think it's entirely possible that all the people who have been arrested might be able to contest any court case or conviction because of these words. Because the government, that is the Home Office, which is the government, because the government has made up its mind that they're all guilty already. And I suggest that some lawyers might make some use of this. However, there are a lot of very stupid people on X, and I want to show you some of them. This person here, Britain's thickest person, he means Lee Anderson, of course, because this is Dunning-Kruger in spades, does not seem to understand when the police arrest a person and the CPS, that's the Crown Prosecution Service, decide to take that person to court. They do so because they assume that person is guilty, and then says that's the whole point of courts. Well, with respect, Eurotoff, I think from that name we can guess what sort of a mentality this person has. If a presumption of guilt was already there, then there would be no point in courts, would they? Or they'd just be rubber stamped. Why go through all the fuss and bother of trials and people opening books and looking up precedents and all the rest of it if, as you say, the police arrest somebody, it's obvious they're going to be guilty if the police arrested them, and then the case they give to the CPS means that the CPS says, right, they're probably guilty, and so they're guilty. And then he says that's the whole point of courts. So I think what he's saying is the courts are just there to rubber stamp what the police and the CPS say. And he calls Lee Anderson the Britain's thickest person. Right, so then there were some responses to that. This guy with a rude name says, delete that, it's rubbish. Prosecutors do not get to decide who's innocent or guilty. That's the job of a jury. And he's right. And then he's just as confused. Prosecutors, the police and the CPS assume a person's guilt. The defence assume a person's innocence. It's up to the court, jury to decide guilty or innocent. So he's just contradicted his own argument. If nobody was ever presumed guilty by the police and the CPS, nobody would ever be taken to court. True, but the police and the CPS are not the ones who decide whether they're guilty or innocent. And then Peter Rudename says the government should not be declaring anyone guilty of a crime before a trial. It's a basic principle of fair law. If a newspaper printed that somebody was guilty before a trial, they would justifiably be in trouble, and a trial could be thrown out because of it. And that's what I was saying about what the Home Office said. Possibly all of those people who've been arrested can now argue that the Home Office has decided their guilt by calling them criminals, and then and they can't have a fair trial. So that's it. We have some very, very stupid people posting stuff on Twitter, X. And what I find most upsetting is the way this isn't causing this here. I haven't seen anything in the media about this, but this is a terrible thing. Lee Anderson is the only one who's pointed it out, and he's absolutely right. And it's just an example of the Home Office having reached, I was going to say peak corruption, but no, it's the opposite, the nadir of corruption. Now, we know that the Home Office, well, all the civil service has been infiltrated by left activists. One of the major figures in the Labour Party now is a woman called Sue Gray, who was a civil service grandee and was responsible for, well, more or less for de-seating Boris Johnson. And then she went straight from the civil service into the Labour Party. I mean, that's at least open to an interpretation of corruption, is it not? And there's a legacy to that. These criminals will face the full force of the law. I hope they all get off just with that argument. And I hope they make appeals just with that argument. It's a disgrace. Okay, till next time. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing, if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.